Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, pleasure to meet you all. Always a pleasure to tell you more about genetic signatures. I always like to start by framing the company, and we are focused on the better detection of infectious diseases. Why infectious diseases? Because they're a leading cause of death. And more importantly than that, they're preventable in many circumstances. If you can more quickly, more accurately diagnose somebody with an infectious disease, you could administer treatment, or you could isolate them, stopping that spread and ultimately saving lives. It's been estimated very recently that antibiotic-resistant bacteria cause 5 million deaths a year. So that's just a class of bacteria. And that's something like 10 deaths every minute. So by the time I'm done here, there'll be 150 lives lost just because of this one type of infection, a bacteria. We also have viruses and parasites, etc. So that's what drives us to be better able to pick up these infections. Antibiotic resistance in particular is predicted to take more lives than cancer by the year 2050. So it's really in this context that we have developed a technology here in Australia. It's called 3Base. It's something we're very proud of, and it gives us a way that we can better detect infectious agents. It's a molecular test, and all that molecular means is that we detect the DNA or the RNA of the organism. It's a direct test. We don't have to grow the bacteria or any of those older traditional methods. It simplifies the way that we can detect multiple pathogens in a single sample. I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but essentially we can give the lab and the doctor more information, and we can do that in a way that's far simpler than other methods. We need fewer reagents to do that. We've had some very strong commercial adoption here in Australia. We're in a very exciting stage where we're expanding now into Europe and the US markets. What do we provide to those markets? We have 4 diagnostic test kits that are already cleared, regulatory cleared. We have 5 new kits coming through the development pathway. We've had strong revenue growth, really since listing in 2015. Last year was 35 million. We're cash flow positive, 6.7 million, and profitable at 3.1 million. But we're excited because we do have these multiple drivers for growth. And these are all funded either from our balance sheet or anticipated future cash. And the drivers, the commercial expansion really into Europe and US, both of which represent 75% of the world molecular market. Australia's 1 to 2% of the world market. And that product expansion, multiple new products completing development and getting registered in those markets. So I like to think of our products as the cartridge in the printer and cartridge model, and we also have instruments. We do have hardware that we place in labs, and we embed our technology into those labs. So the instruments are the printer in that model. As a very quick snapshot, market cap is 109 million. We have 32 million in cash, no debt, which gives us an enterprise value of 76.5 million. So that's our cash is about a third of our share price, which I think probably speaks to the share price, which may indicate why a couple of companies have initiated research with quite a premium to where we're trading at the moment. In terms of the register, we have Chris Abbott from Maple Brown Abbott. He was our founder, one of our founders 21 years ago. We're also very happy to have Perennial, Fidelity, and the likes on our register. So this has been our strong revenue growth over the years. We did hear it's an 89% 4-year CAGR, and the first quarter results for this year are there at 5.7. Again, what's exciting for us is that growing contribution from international sales. So we've done very well in Australia, and we're leveraging that now into Europe. COVID was good for us as a company because we were able to develop a test very quickly, and it introduced a number of customers for us in Europe. And what we're seeing now is they're moving away from COVID-only testing to testing for multiple organisms in that one patient sample. We also are very, very excited by what the US contributions will be once we get our first FDA cleared product, and I will tell you more about that. So as I said, there has been strong demand for SARS-CoV-2, but we know that these tests are being scaled back. And that's why we're happy that we are shifting to what we call syndromic testing. I think everybody here has had the experience where they've got symptoms, they've gone for a COVID test and told they were negative. But what does that mean? You still have symptoms. Was the test wrong? Do you have something else? So the idea of syndromic testing is to look for a lot of potential causes for your symptoms. It's very reassuring to be told you don't have COVID, but you have rhinovirus, which is very mild and you'll be over it in a few days. So we're seeing that shift right now from COVID only through to respiratory, to complete screening, especially in the new customers that we've put on over the last few years. When I say customers, I refer to labs, testing labs. These are the pathology labs. Australian Clinical Labs is a customer of ours. They're high throughput labs. We simply sell them test kits, and they use those kits to test patient samples. I'm not going to dwell much on our financial summary, other than I've already said we have 32 million in cash, and we've got the executing on our plans to invest in those growth opportunities. And clearly those international markets, also new products that we put out, given that they're revenue generating. The regulatory clearances can be costly, and so we've got now the funds to execute on multiple products in multiple jurisdictions. We always invest in our technology, and we've made some technology improvements lately, but more importantly, we're building a sample to result instrument, which is going to be fully automated. The worker in the path lab literally puts your patient sample into the machine. It will do the conversion and report results. But I do want to tell you a little bit about 3Base. It is something that we are really exceptionally proud of. It's what's different about genetic signatures compared to any other molecular diagnostics company in the world. It was developed here in Australia. I've already told you it's molecular, so we're detecting the nucleic acid, the DNA or the RNA of the organism. And we know that PCR, which you've heard of in the recent past, is the gold standard, and there's a reason for that. It's very specific, it's very sensitive. But it's less effective when you need to detect multiple organisms in the one patient sample. It's also less effective when there are new strains or subtypes that come out. We've all heard of Delta and Omicron, and now the new variants that are coming through. They're different at the genetic level. So that's why PCR struggles in those circumstances when you try and do these multiple tests simultaneously. So our 3Base technology avoids all of that. As I said, it gives us more information with fewer reagents or fewer primers that we need to detect what's there. How does it work? It's probably easier to show you graphically. We literally convert the C letter to a T letter. DNA has an alphabet, A, C, G, or T, and we literally convert one letter to another letter. This is the most common mutation that we see in microorganisms. In nature, C's often go to T. So what we've done is when we look at, this is actually real sequence, it's human papillomavirus, it does cause cervical cancer. These are just 3 variants of HPV. This top one has 2 C's, this middle one has none, the last has 1 C. When we convert every C to T, we end up with the one target, which is representative of all these 3. So we only have to look for one variant to pick up, or one sequence to pick up all variants. And if that's not clear, the best way is just to think of a spelling, US spelling versus Australian spelling, Z versus S, realise. If we were doing a word search, looking for that code that of realise with an S, we would miss all the ones with a Z and vice versa. But if there was a way to convert the Z into an S, searching for the word realise would pick up both variants of that same word. So that's really the power of 3Base. It's very easily integrated into existing laboratory methods. There's nothing that the technicians have to do that they don't already do. But they do get the benefits of having a rapid test in a high throughput environment, with very low manual involvement. It's very automated, and there's a reduced contamination risk because the 3 base sequences that we detect do not exist in nature. As I said, we do run on standard equipment that's in the lab, but we also make instruments and supply instruments because these further automate the process. Less hands-on time, and we can increase the throughput. Again, these are the printers in that printer and cartridge model. I've already introduced syndromic testing to you, and I've given you the example of the respiratory where you have runny nose, sore throat, cough, etc. But there are many, there are 20 different viruses that can cause those same symptoms. And syndromic testing allows us to look for all of those potential causes of those symptoms. So we don't have to order, or the doctor doesn't have to order multiple tests to try and work out what's going on. And that's where 3base is really, can really contribute to tests that are able to pick up these multiple organisms. So we already have tests for well over 100 targets, and all we do is we can combine them into a kit form that can detect infections that may be causing those symptoms, remembering that we're better able to detect the variants. So we've never had to change our COVID test, for example, because it's a perfect match to every single variant that has come out. But the exciting part is the revenue growth, everything that you've seen has really just come from those top two products. There's a respiratory test which detects about 14 organisms. There's a gastrointestinal test that looks for enteric illness that looks at over 20 targets. But again, we're excited because we have kits for sexually transmitted diseases and antimicrobial resistance, and these are already have regulatory approval in a number of areas. We have tests for tropical diseases coming through. These are mosquito-borne diseases like Flavi and Zika. This is revenue generating. They're using this test right now in Kenya. And we have a number of kits that are coming through in development, remembering they're all revenue generating and they all detect multiple organisms. I mentioned the US before, and we have identified an unmet need in the US, and that is to detect enteric protozoa. These are the parasites that can infect the gut. They can be quite chronic. They lead to a failure to thrive in children. I just want to dwell on that for a minute because the standard method for detecting these parasites is looking down a microscope, taking a stool sample and looking down a microscope and visualizing them. And there are 5.5 million of these tests done in the US, and they do that very unreliable microscopy method. It's usually a cost center to the lab because the reimbursements are very low. They're in the tens of dollars, and they can wait a week and a half for results. We've identified that with our enteric protozoan kit, we can detect 8 of the protozoans that cause these types of infections. And we're putting this through clinical trial in the US. We've actually just finished recruitment for that trial, and we're working through analysing the results, targeting to submit to the FDA in the coming months. It will be our first product, but more importantly, there's a reimbursement code which is at $260. So for the labs that bring this test on, it will go to a profit centre and they'll be able to report results same day with higher sensitivity. So our marketing's already well underway in the US for this. There were webinars that are on our website. We have direct sales and marketing. We have warehousing. And because we're targeting high throughput, there's not too many labs that make up that 5.5 million labs. There are a number of, the top 30 would make up the majority of that number. And of course, it would be our first 3-base cleared test for the US. So in terms of recent achievements, as I said, we've just finished recruitment of that clinical trial. We've had an independent study published out of France, which looked at our antimicrobial resistance kit, and that showed excellent biological performance for 5 of the most common causes of bacterial antibiotic resistance. We're expanding our customer base. We've just announced that we've brought on a number of customers in Western Australia. They're trying respiratory and gastrointestinal targets. And we've recently achieved registration of our enteric protozoan kit in the Canadian market. So in terms of growth initiatives, I hope it's clear now that we can leverage this experience from Australia and to grow into those much larger markets. We're building our portfolio of our tests. We sell them under the EasyScreen brand. And we've got a way now to embed 3-base technology into those high value, high throughput customer labs. We continue to invest in our technology. We've recently received clearance for a saliva test for COVID, which avoids you having to put a swab up your nose, and that's that next generation instrument that I was telling you about. So we're looking forward to keeping the market informed with our launching our enteric protozoan kit, the increased sales and presence in the UK and European markets, the initiation of our next clinical trial, and always informing the market of our new test, technology developments, etc. through our quarterly sales. So thank you, and we'll be here all day if you have any questions.
Thank you very much.